goes live in 2 minutes. Lynn Cullen live in 1 minute. Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Hello. It'd be a Thursday. It'd be the 10th of the 9th month, September of 2015. And it's a dreary day. We could have used the rain. That's good. I have it on good authority that I was going to say effing football season starts tonight, which I guess is true. And I don't care. I think it'll be interesting to see because the Pirates have a home game. I think it'll be interesting to see. For all I know, the game's sold out because almost every game seems to have been, but I wonder how big a crowd they'll have tonight. The sense being that this is such a football town. Speaking of that, very quickly, sports stuff. The Wall Street Journal today has a little piece about how Facebook, I mean, stop and think about all the information that's on Facebook. All right. And it can be gotten through, and it can be collated, and it can be organized in different ways. And so Facebook decided that they would aggregate all the posts on Facebook of the 49 million Facebook users who have liked an official team site. Okay, so of the Facebook users, 49 million have liked the Steelers' home site or the Cardinals or whatever, right? So they took all of those 49 million and they looked at their their posts between July 22nd and September 7th, essentially when training camps started and right up until this Monday when this is the first week and when it begins. And so they can do that. Okay, 49 million, anybody who liked a Steeler or a professional football team's Facebook page, and they looked all through them, and they got the software that figures out whether what they were saying about the teams that they had liked was positive or negative kinds of things. So they look for positive words, they look for negative words, to see who were the most optimistic fans heading into this season and who are the most pessimistic fans heading into the season. Who had the most grumbling, woe is us fans. Are you ready? Don't worry. We're not the last. We are not. The most grumbly fans are San Diego Chargers. But right above them, and I understand how this would have happened, the New England Patriots fans. And of course, because this is during the Brady Deflategate thing where he's been suspended, so you can bet there's all this. Okay, so the Patriots show way, way, way down at the bottom of the list. One notch above the Patriots, Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, what's that about? We just grumbly fans? What is that about? I don't even want to say we. I mean, whatever. Not happy campers. So these are the most pessimistic Facebook users who are also fans of a specific sports team, and the Steelers are almost at the bottom. Patriots, you can understand. But us, I'm not quite sure about that. The most optimistic fans? The Chiefs. Well, I understand, because they've been coming up. And I guess they're the only undefeated team in the preseason, not that that matters. So there you have it. For what that's worth, there's a lot of stuff about lists in the paper, in the Post-Gazette today, and ranking. So their fans in Pittsburgh, Steeler fans, look to be, whiners, grumblers, and pessimistic about the team. And then on the front page, it says right here that Pennsylvania ranks as one of the absolute worst places in the country to have a baby. What does that mean? It means that the kind of support services that ideally would be there for mothers and young families and the kind of environment you want to raise a child in are apparently sadly lacking. It is not Pennsylvania, believe it or not, and this is what you always hate to see. It was penultimate on the list. It was 49th. Actually, it was 50th because there was 51. They had District of Columbia in there. So we were almost in last place. That means, I hate to say this, Mississippi did better than us. That means Alabama did better, and Louisiana, and Georgia, and West Virginia, and all those states we like to mock. Oh, God. Anyway, to look further into that, you just find out it has to do with things like a number of pediatricians. Apparently there aren't any in this state. Support groups or things for mothers. Other than Pittsburgh and Philly, apparently it's a pretty bad scene. Also, air pollution. It was a huge thing that brought us down. I don't know. So that's a bad one. You want another bad one? Jeez. Brian O'Neill does a whole column today on all these things, and he found out, he says, this just in, Pittsburgh ranks as the third best city to be a sports fan in. Whoop-de-doo. It put Pittsburgh, we were number 3 in football, best place to be a football fan. Even though you will be so disgruntled as a football fan that you will place second to last in the Facebook disgruntled preseason fan thing. I mean, these things seem to Oh, it's absolutely the best place to be a football fan. On the other hand, football fans, where you are, which is the best place, are miserable and constantly pessimistic folks. I don't know what any of this means then. And we placed third. Green Bay, my place of my birth, placed second. And for some reason, East Lansing, Michigan placed... they don't even have a professional team. What's that about? That's Michigan State. That's Michigan State. What? I mean, they don't even belong in there. Whatever. He keeps saying that all these lists are a bunch of crap. And he also says, and we should ask whether we want our identity so closely tied to sports. Is that what we're about? And he likes to see the rankings where it turns out that, we have the most libraries or something like that. And he points out something that I've heard before but find it hard to believe, but it's true. More people pass through the doors of one of the city's Carnegie libraries. Almost 3 million people went to one of our libraries last year. And that's more than bought tickets to the Pirates games. And that's more, of course, than the Steelers and the Penguins and on and on. And yet, when you think of us, you think, football, hockey, and the more cerebral, baseball. We, by the way, are the number 2 team in the nation. Today, the current standings, we have pulled even with Kansas City and only, of course, the St. Louis Cardinals, which we're all sick of looking at their backsides, frankly, but that's just the way it's going to have to be. Okay, so that's it for sports. I'm not going to mention another sports-related thing ever. It's not true. Okay, so these homeopaths, what's a homeopath? It's somebody who's into alternative medicine. So there was a homeopathic conference held recently in Germany. And let's just put it this way. Something went horribly awry. Police were called and found, let me just get this so I'll get the account exactly. Police came, and it says this: alarmed by the sight of so many grown men and women rolling around on the floor, they called for backup, triggering a major incident response. A total of 160 police, fire crews, ambulances, and a helicopter were involved in a 4-hour operation to treat the writhing homeopaths on the ground. This is just south of Hamburg. The homeopaths were hallucinating, staggering, groaning, and rolling around in the grass. It is thought that somebody might have been passing around something that they thought was a really nice new way to treat something or other. All the delegates are now said to be out of physical danger, but there yet may be legal consequences. There's now a criminal investigation to see whether it was an accident or an experiment gone awry or whatever. A spokesman for one of the clinics, they were taken to 7 different hospitals, said patients had to be strapped into beds to prevent them from causing danger to others. A spokesman for the clinic said they were completely off their heads. And so there you have it. They think somebody might have passed out something akin to LSD, something called 2CE, some kind of synthetic. That was created by the guy who created ecstasy. So who knows? But anyway, so much for it's sort of a black eye for homeopathy. So there you have it. Mystery surrounds hallucinatory chaos at German homeopathy conference. One of my favorite stories of the day. Another favorite story is the discovery of a long-lost cousin of ours. I always love these things. And there's a wonderful picture of, like, the vice president of South Africa or something kissing the skull. He's like, oh, it's been so long since I've seen you. Mwah! They say it's a new member of our family. And it's unlike anybody we've ever seen before. Definitely a biped. Definitely walked upright. Definitely didn't have much of a brain. They think. A very small, what do they call that? A brain pan? But they found this in just a whole... You know, it's weird. So you wonder what I always wonder when we say, well, we know that the oldest human being is... But we don't know anything of the like because we think the oldest human being is the one we found. To think that the soul, what is in our purview is not necessarily the reality, right? And it always annoys me when they talk about, well, Java man and Peking man. I say, okay, fine. But, there might be a Wilmerding man, that nobody's found yet, who's going to confound all of the ideas of where we came from and how we got to where we are. So I guess they haven't really done a lot of work on this distant cousin, who they're calling Homo naledi. I'm going to mix that up with the new name of Mount McKinley. Okay, so what? Yeah, you got... McKinley is Denali, and our new friend here is Naledi. And I will mix them up. And actually what's going to happen is I will forget both by noon. Hands and feet, they say, look just like ours, but the shoulders don't, and the small brain is not up to snuff. And I don't know. I think it's about 2.5 to 2.8 million years old. Don't ask me. They don't know, but they're still going to be fiddling around with it to... Yeah, the deputy president, Cyril Ramaphosa, grabbed that skull and kissed it. They are not claiming this is a direct ancestor of modern-day Homo people. And some experts who had nothing to do with this said they definitely believed it was not. How can they not definitely believe it was not if they haven't been part of they haven't even seen the damn stuff? So, who knows? There's a lot of blah-blahing going on in the science world. Who's the guy, Trevor Noah, who's replacing or has replaced, or I don't know, Jon Stewart on The Daily Show? He tweeted something to the effect of, if you dig up bones, generally speaking, you're a criminal. But if they're old enough, you're an anthropologist. And then you get your name in the paper in a good way. This stuff is like a Sherlock Holmes mystery, says a scientist at George Washington University. I don't know. Could this be the body of Homo erectus? Absolutely not, says Mr. Berger. It could not be erectus. Can you see fistfights breaking out over this? You call that erectus? I'll show you an erectus. Oh, God. I wonder if the anthropological world is as ugly, political, backbiting as, I don't know, the Vatican. Or, the academic world is brutal. So one would think, yes. Anybody out there? Why do I feel so? Sometimes when I'm talking here, I feel perfectly normal, natural. And then sometimes when I'm sitting here yapping, I feel like a crazy person. I feel like, like I'm walking down the street and talking animatedly to no one in particular. And, it constitutes a nutcase. Oh, if by saying nutcase I triggered anybody, I'm really sorry. All right, what else we have here? Oh, so yesterday I mentioned that Queen Elizabeth, she's done it. She's the oldest. She's the longest serving. She's the. But it's been a riot to see how much in England there's a pretty large subset of people who just hate her guts. I mean, what? I don't know why. It's not they hate her personally. They hate the idea of a queen and a king. And so some of the snarky, nasty commentary on this milestone in the queen's reign has been rather vicious, I must say. We Americans, because we don't have a king or a queen, a lot of us get off on watching the spectacle. Because what little girl hasn't wanted to be a princess? Polly Toynbee, who maybe never wanted to be a princess as a child and hence grew up an embittered woman working at the Guardian newspaper. She said this: the queen is the mistress of nothingness. Her only job has been to stay alive, procreate, and do nothing to upset the multitudes. That's pretty much right, actually. Margie, I'm sorry, Margie. You should have told me a million years ago your name's Margie, not Margie. Margie wants to know how they know that this guy was a homo. Okay. And Polly Toynbee, back to the Queen, points out that poor Charles is now the oldest ever Prince of Wales. If the Queen, I was thinking this the other day, remember how old her mother lived? Her mother was alive at like 150 and still looking like this roly-poly, who apparently drank like a fish and was a nasty sort of person. Anyway, Charles is now the oldest ever Prince of Wales. If the Queen lives as long as her mother, he'll be 79 years old when he finally gets to be king, if he gets to be king. You think Polly Toynbee's done? She went on fulminating. If centuries of privileged breeding and education produce dunderheads and Philistines, that proves talent is genetically random, not inherited. Put an end to this royal infantilizing of a nation, she said. Imagine how abolishing the monarchy would open all the dusty constitutional cupboards to the sunlight of reform. Let her reign as long as she lives, but let her be Elizabeth the Last. There it is. Okay, and the thing that the Queen is a little dull, not particularly bright, has been going around for some time, as is the case with her son Charles. In his diaries, Alan Clark, who was a minister of the government back, he had a diary, and he apparently wrote some things that not necessarily supposed to write if you're allowed into the Queen's inner sanctum. But he did, and he was taken by how dull she was. And he wrote in his diary, after a ceremony in 1991, when she would have been a very young woman, kind of, not. He said this. She rose from her chair and moved regally to initiate a painfully, grotesquely banal conversation. Well, what's she supposed to say? She's surrounded by, she gets up and, hello, how are you? The weather's not been too great. I mean, what are you gonna talk about? I don't know. And he went on, not for the first time, I wondered about the Queen. Is she really rather dull and stupid? Or is she thinking, how do people so dull and stupid as this guy ever get to be ministers? And then he figured, or is it for her? You know, for him, this was a big to-do. He was at some fancy ceremony. He says, or is it for her? The whole thing so stale and deja vu after 40 years that she would really rather be going around her stables and patting racehorses on the nose. Yeah, that probably would be it. 24. Okay. Sorry. I am now going to admit something. Have I admitted this before? So I got on a jag recently after reading some article. Oh, I read the article maybe 7, 8, 9, 10 months ago, whatever. But it put a little bug in my head that I couldn't get rid of. And then I came across a book at the wonderful new independent bookstore on Forbes Avenue in Squirrel Hill. Why am I blanking on the name? It's lovely. What is it? Classic Lines? I have no idea. It doesn't sound right, but I don't know. Anyway, it's just wonderful. I love that place.
Amazing Books?
Amazing Books? No.
Classic Lines is on Forbes.
That's it. Classic Lines then. Well, I recommend it. It's like, right where a woman's dress shop used to be. And now is no more. Well, it's actually up the street, but it doesn't matter. What a great bookstore. So anyway, one day I'm in there and I come across that which I had been sort of looking for kind of maybe if the... It was a coloring book. It was a coloring book of very intricate designs and stuff, like flowers and abstract things. And it was clearly not for children. And I had read somewhere a long time ago that this was something that a lot of people were taking up as a stress reducer. That once you are coloring something intricate, you have to be focused totally on it. And that means you're not thinking of other things. You're not on your computer or your phone. You are just putting color on a thing and blah, blah, blah. So, and I thought, you know what? That sounds like a good idea, maybe. So I got the coloring book, and then I ran over somewhere and got, like 1 million pencils, colored pencils, because crayons ain't going to work on this stuff. It's too intricate. And I waited a long, long time before attempting it. I felt very intimidated because I don't think of myself as much of an artist or of somebody who's good with color. And eventually I just sucked it up, looked for a pretty easy looking one, and I went to work. I was underwhelmed. I was totally underwhelmed, and far from being a de-stressor, I became anxious because I looked at what I had wrought or was writing, and it just didn't look that good. It didn't look pretty. And I thought, oh, you don't know how to do color. Why would you have put that green next to that pink? Oh, God. So there was this immediate critical voice in my head saying, you don't pass muster, missy. And that is not stress reducing. That's anxiety producing. I plowed on. I've done 3, and I've hung up my pencils. But that is after I ran out and got a whole bunch of other coloring books and gave them to women who I thought would find them wonderful. I gave one to a woman who did love it and even sent me like pictures of her pages that she'd colored. She was so proud. And I gave it to some others, one of whose husbands told me just last night, which is why this is in my head, she really doesn't like the coloring book. I said, well, that's okay. She can just give it to somebody else or throw it in the trash. I don't care. He says, it makes her anxious. So there are 2 of us now, made anxious by something which is supposed to make us relaxed. I don't know what any of that means. I really don't. But then I open up today's paper, and there is a piece about adults doing coloring books. So obviously, yeah, this is now something. And of the 5 biggest sellers on Amazon this week, 2 are coloring books. What does that mean? The person writing this doesn't think it means anything good. And not only that, it turns out that women are now forming coloring clubs where I guess they sit around and color. Look at what I just did. Isn't that lovely? Now, far be it from me to, and the religion news service says that religious folk are exploring whether coloring could be used as a spiritual practice, bringing you closer to God. Okay, so here's what we got going. We got an increasingly growing population of adults doing what, up until I first read about it, was considered a child's thing. Children do coloring books. And here's what I didn't know. Childhood educators and people who study how children learn will tell you that coloring books are not good things, even for children. Given a choice between giving a child a coloring book or giving a child a blank piece of paper, it's the blank piece of paper that will allow the child to grow, to create, to explore. But hemming the child into an already produced form, telling them to color inside the lines, will block their creative impulses. We have a caller. Hello.
Hello. So this puts me in mind of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Are they coloring in there? I can't remember.
No, they're not. But it seems to be some sort of reminds me of some sort of group therapy for people who are not all there. Basket weaving comes to mind also. But yeah, I don't see. I would agree with you. I don't see how limiting yourselves to, excuse the pun or the cliche, but coloring within the lines would help you whatsoever. I mean, I understand what they say about meditation, but
yeah, I mean, if you're really, you do have to pay attention when you're doing it. So, and your brain is not totally occupied. So maybe there's a restfulness that could come over someone's brain doing that, unless you're like me and have this super critical voice in your head.
Yeah, I think I have the feeling that it's playing to a juvenile sort of part of the brain that it seems to me that it comes from a place where we limit. It's easier to limit ourselves than it is to truly open up.
Right. Right.
So, yeah, I would rather go crazy and
with just
go out, just not use the lines or whatever. But yeah, it's an odd thing. Is this a first world white people kind of thing?
Oh, sure it is.
Yeah, it's gross. Okay.
Goodbye. He's a real artist, by the way. So, for people like me who are not artistically inclined, putting a blank sheet of paper in front of me is instant anxiety and fear that I won't make the mark, or no pun intended again, but just total performance anxiety. And yet it turns out that even coloring inside the lines created in me this anxiety. So what I didn't know is that coloring books are just considered not to be a good idea in general. And that's according to people like the National Association for the Education of Young Children and the renowned professor of art education, Victor Lowenfeld, who said he thought coloring books were destroyers of creative thinking. And he also said that pre-made pages invite children to become obsessive perfectionists. There you go. I can see that. Oh, it slipped and I went a little outside the... Excuse me. That didn't work. So he also said that a child who uses a coloring book will fixate on ideals that his own hand cannot produce, becoming frustrated and reaching the conclusion that he himself has no talent. And according to a therapist in Psychology Today, she writes, coloring books are the junk food of the art world, and their use is not therapeutic. Do you know how much I spent on coloring books in the last 2 months? God dang it. So if you want a child to, don't give them coloring books. And coloring books for grown-ups, I would say that's okay. Anything a grown-up wants to do that if it worked for them, it's better than sitting and drinking yourself into a stupor if coloring would work. And I love all those pencils. But the colors I don't know. Anyway. And here is one more. Somebody thinking about all this. The coloring book phenomenon is more stress relief and therapy. It's less intimidating than doing a painting. And for many people, it's nostalgic. So that's true, too. Oh, when's the last time you got to color? When you were a little kid with no cares in the world. And, so maybe it helps take you back there. And it's pointed out that for stress reduction, exercise is known to work. But coloring lets you sit on your big duff and not move much of a muscle. So if you want to alleviate stress, go outside. And if you want to be part of the latest fad, color in a coloring book. I have some pencils I could give you. I also have a few coloring books. I remember when my mom was here last, I showed them to her. I said, "Hey, Mom, check this out." And she took one look and she said, "You don't think I'm going to do that, do you?" She was simply appalled. But what do I know? I knew, Ray. I knew when I said some things about Queen Elizabeth that our resident royal hater was going to not be able to contain himself. So I haven't looked at this yet, but the subject line is royal family, and the sender is Ray. Here we go. Lynn. I will never understand the loving obsession with this evil family. All of their wealth and power are derived by murder, theft, and oppression around the world. And now these inbred dullards are breeding anew. The reason the queen is so long-lived is she knows the hell that awaits her on the other side. I also am horrified that our city is celebrating Britsburg. Yeah, what is that about? Have you seen that? With British-themed events and activities. I may attend some with my Michael Collins Cork Rebel Hero shirt. P.S. Save the coloring books for infirmary time. Stick to the crosswords. I'm still doing my crosswords. That I do. Okay, this is PJ writing in. There are a few rules that the painter Richard Diebenkorn came up with. In general, they are very useful and accurate guidelines. And this is how one begins a painting. Number 1, attempt what is not certain. Certainty may or may not come later. It may then be a valuable delusion. God. God. Rules like this can make your head spin. Okay. You get that? That was number 1. Attempt what is not certain, and when you think it might be certain, that could just be a delusion. Okay. 2, the pretty initial position, which falls short of completeness, is not to be valued, except as a stimulus for further moves. This guy is way out there for me. 3, do search, but in order to find other than what is searched for. Okay, I like that. Be a searcher, and ideally, whether you find what you're searching for or not, you will still be rewarded with discovery. I like that. Use and respond to the initial fresh qualities, but consider them absolutely expendable. Don't discover a subject of any kind. Somehow don't be bored, but if you must, use it in action. Use its destructive potential. Mistakes can't be erased, but they move you from your present position. Number 8, keep thinking about Pollyanna. That didn't seem to belong. Number 9, tolerate chaos. Yes! 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 If more people tolerated chaos, we'd be a happier people. I can assure you of that. And we wouldn't need to get into coloring books because we wouldn't be stressed out wrecks. We would just be going with the flow. And number 10, be careful. Only in a perverse way. God, jeez. Okay. I don't think these are the kinds of things that your gray-haired little old mother would embroider for you. Rather than home sweet home, wouldn't that be neat if your mom gave you something that was like hand done that said, tolerate chaos? That would be a real good thing for a mom to do. Okay. Hang on here. Think I'm done? I'm not done. I'm just getting started. Oh, shoot. I don't think I want to talk about that. I mean, the refugee. Did you see the Hungarian reporter, female? Did you see about that? Who tripped a mother, a refugee, who was holding a child? God. So anyway, our Secretary of State, the ridiculously tall John Kerry, is suggesting that we take 100,000 refugees in. And I would suggest that's the least we could do. I mean, Germany, a smaller country, is taking 800,000. Just because we're geographically removed doesn't mean we're incapable of taking more. But then you think, hey, what would the Republicans say? They'd say each one of these people, because they're coming from the Middle East, are going to slit our throats in our beds and blow us to smithereens. So watch this be a difficult thing to accomplish. But as I say that about Republicans, I want to point something out. Lindsey Graham, one of the many who is in the running for the Republican presidential nomination, who doesn't have a chance, but who is on every Sunday talk show, every Sunday for the last 500 years, and is in your face all the time, and never saw a war he didn't want to fight or create, strangely said something about Kerry's proposal that I thought set him apart from the usual Republican pack. He said this: we should take our fair share of refugees. I don't know how he defines fair share, but he said, we are good people. I don't think the average American has any idea what it's like to live in the Mideast right now. So there's a Republican being empathetic and suggesting that if Americans were a little more on top of things, that they might find within them sympathy for these poor people and even a desire to help them. But all of this refugee stuff, by the way, has made me think about something I remember reading probably about 7, 8, 9 years ago, 10, I don't know, but long enough ago, when we were first talking about this sense of globalism, and also when we were becoming aware of the changes, true changes it was creating. And then on top of it, put climate change. And it was an article, and I'm sure I shared it with you because I found it so fascinating, why I can't get it out of my head to this day. But it talked about, for people who think, well, we don't have to get involved, well, this won't come to us, well, that there is no way that the kind of disruption created by failing states, by Islamic civil war, by climate change, by global economic struggles, it will impact everybody, always. We are that much of an entity now, all of us together. And it delineated what we can expect to see in the next decades. And one of the things that stuck with me was huge human migrations. Well, here we go. Humans will begin out of desperation to leave places that are dysfunctional and or dangerous. Now, with climate change, a lot more places are going to become uninhabitable or economically unviable as, cultures or places that, used to, they grew this, and that's how everybody survived. And now, that doesn't grow here anymore. People have to pick up. They have to leave, just as the animals are desperately looking for places that they can live now. We're finding fish in places fish didn't used to be, birds in places where birds didn't used to be, and humans in places that they had not been before, because that which they are leaving is no longer a viable environment. And the dislocation of huge multitudes of humanity, of families and children and old people, will disrupt everybody and will require of the places that are targeted as their destinations, will require a lot of thought, a lot of compassion, a lot of money, a lot of understanding that these people have nowhere to go. We're going to have to share. We're going to have to move over. And it doesn't come naturally. So this article had said, so with these movements, huge movements of humanity into places they had otherwise not been, that will set off disruption in the places that they're going to. Yes? Yeah? So you see the European Union trying to hang together right now, still reeling from the financial impacts of failing states financially, Greece and Spain and whatever. So now you add to that this human flood. And what you will see, mark my words, and we are already seeing it, it's in the sort of nascent stage, is Europe doing what Europe does so well. It'll turn to the right. And you will have xenophobia. You will have fear of the other. You will have violence. You will have right-wing governments installed. You're getting to know, for instance, the lovely Hungarian government. Who knew the head of Hungary was? Whoever heard a word the man said? I've been watching because I am noting the sort of return of terrifying anti-Semitism and just the rise again of the far right in that geography, that geographic area where so many were killed not so long ago. So here we see it again. The same pressures of humanity, of desperate people, and then the not the greatest aspects of human nature showing themselves. So that article I read, I do not know how long ago, I've been waiting for this. I've been preparing. I've been fearing it. And I don't think because the climate change stuff hasn't really kicked in yet. Start to imagine 30 years, 40 years, when the sea level rises to the point where huge cities become unlivable. Imagine the human migration then. And where are we going to put everybody? So I would hope that, I would hope, not much. I would hope that we'd get better as a people at recognizing that we are one family and we damn well better take care of each other because we made the mess. Totally. Our financial systems made a mess. Our governments made a mess. Our human greed made a mess. And we will reap the whirlwind. All right, Kathleen says about coloring books. I think this coloring book thing is more about a person's brain than about artistic ability or lack thereof. I am ADHD, but relatively normal functioning. There is an experience that we ADHDers have called hyperfocus. Although our brains jump around a lot, when we focus, we become entranced. It is a wonderful place. This coloring thing seems to let some people into the world of hyperfocus. where there is no stress. For other brains, those that function more like ADHDers, the coloring book is nothing more than a return to the horrors of elementary school. May I add that I've always hated coloring. Yeah, I can see. Yeah, so I think you're right. I mean, for some people, I can see where there would be, the calmness that would be just because a word has disappeared from my head does not mean I'm losing it, does it? Result. That was a word, but now I can't remember the sentence I was trying to attach it to, so just forget about it. Oh, boy. Okay, well, guys, I'm sorry, and I don't know why I'm apologizing, but I'm sorry. I truly am. I'm sorry for everything. I am. So there you have it. And sorry I ended on such a scary note. But welcome to my head. Oh, God. And I think that's it. Yeah? Yeah, I think that's it. Unbelievable. All right, I just want to say this. Go Bucks. Steelers? I don't really care. I'm sorry. Go Bucks!
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.